Hello everyone and welcome to this lesson. For this week's exercise, you'll be learning how to write code and map the results to HTML tags. Data binding plays a pivotal role in everything you do in an Angular application. In previous courses, we learned how to create middleware RESTful APIs, but for the most part, we simply return JSON data to the client. With data binding, we can take the JSON response and bind the values to HTML elements in our Angular project. As you work through this week's exercise, please pay close attention to everything that I'm doing, and if you run into issues, make sure you ask questions. So before we write our first line of code, I'm going to show you how the application should have looked from assignment 1.5. So this is the main page. You should have had a top navigation bar with home, about, and contact us. You should also have had your name outputted with your favorite food and then your favorite color. In addition, there should have been the header with the assignment number, and then there should have been an image on the left-hand side of this main page, which would have been your image. So we'll go ahead and open up Visual Studio Code, and I'll kind of walk through the project structure. There should have been two components that were generated. There would have been a My Details component, and then there would have been a My Image component. In the HTML code for the My Image component, you should have just referenced an image in the assets directory. And then in the mydetails.html file, you should have had one unordered list with 3 list items. Those list items should have been your name, your favorite food, and then your favorite color. For this assignment, we're going to be extending this application by adding a class and by showing some of the data binding functionality of an Angular application. So the first thing that we're going to want to do is we want to open up the app.component.ts file, and we're going to actually create a new variable, and we're going to call this variable isLoggedIn, and this is going to be a Boolean value, and then we're going to give it a value of true. I'm also going to go ahead and stop this server just so that it's a little bit faster as we're going through this code, and we'll minimize this window here. We also want to change the assignment number, so we're going to go ahead and change this, and we're going to say exercise, and this is going to be 2.3, and then we're going to say data binding. We'll save that. Now, once we have that in place, we want to go ahead and go over to our app.component.html file, and we actually want to add the logic for this isLoggedIn Boolean value that we just added to our application. So I'll open up the app.component.html file. As you remember from our previous assignment, we have a top navigation bar, we had a main div section, and inside that div section, we outputted our assignment number. And then we also had a one row with one column for 4 length, and then we had another column with 8 length. So what we're going to want to do now is we're going to actually want to add the ng directive to this row that we had here. So we're going to say ng if, and then what we're checking for is to see the value of isLoggedIn. So I'm going to say isLoggedIn. Now I'm also going to add an else statement. So I'm going to say else, and then I want to say show error. What we're going to do is we're actually going to create a template, an HTML template, that we're going to show dynamically based on the content value of isLoggedIn. So I'm going to say ng template, and then I'm going to say hashtag show error. Now what this does is it basically tells Angular, what that directive does, it basically tells Angular that when I call else show error, I want to show the content inside this ng template. And this is going to be just a standard row. So we're going to say div, and then we'll say class equals row. And then we're going to have a 12 column row. So I'm going to say div class, and inside this one, so we'll say column 12. And then inside this one, I'm going to create an H4. And this H4 is going to have the contents of our error message if a person is not authorized to view the content of this page. And so I'm going to give this a class of alert, and then alert danger. And then inside here, I'm just going to give it a message. I'm going to say, you are not authorized to view this content. And basically what we're trying to do is, based on the content value of isLoggedIn, we want to dynamically show this section here of code. So if the value of isLoggedIn equals false, then we want to show this ng template. If it's true, then we want to go ahead and show the profile page that we created in that previous assignment. So let's go ahead and test our work and see what we have. So I'm going to open up a new terminal window. And I'm just going to say ng serve. And what I want you to do is I want you to change the value of is logged in from true to false and then from false to true, just so you can kind of see how content is controlled through the NGF directives. Okay, once it's finished loading, we'll go ahead and open up a browser. And we want to navigate to 4200. And because we set it to true, you're not going to see that error message yet, but we did see the updated exercise 2.3 data binding. So let's go ahead and try changing that value in our app.component.html file and see what happens. So we'll locate is logged in, and then we're just going to change this Boolean value to false. We'll save it, and then we'll go back over to the browser. And you should see a message that says you are not authorized to view this content. Now that makes sense. That's actually the template that we created. So in our app.component.html file, that template that we added with that message, alert, alert, danger, you're not authorized to view this content, is being shown because we set that Boolean is logged in value to false. So let's go ahead and change it back to true so we can finish coding the rest of our exercise. So we'll say true. Now, the next thing we want to do is we want to go ahead and open up the mydetails.component.ts file. So I'm going to stop the server again, close this window so we have more real estate to view, and then we're going to open up the mydetails.component.ts file. I'll close out the rest of these other tabs that I have open. Now at the top here underneath our import statement, what we want to do is we want to create a new class, and this class is going to be called person. So we're going to say export default class, and then person. We also need to create a constructor for this, so we're going to say constructor. And we're going to create a couple class variables or properties. So we're going to say full name, and that's going to be a string value. We're going to say favorite food. That is going to be a string. We're going to say favorite color. That is going to be a string. And then we're going to have one more, and that's going to be called keywords. And now this time, this keywords is going to be an array. I'm just going to add some pre-vault values, and we're going to say hashtag TypeScript. We'll say hashtag 2020, hashtag coding with Angular, and then we're going to say hashtag NG Omaha. Now, in the parentheses of our constructor, we're going to require, so whenever we add values to the parentheses of a constructor, we're basically telling anyone that instantiates that person or whatever object we've created, anytime they instantiate it, they're forced to pass in those values while it's being instantiated. So the first one was full name, and that was a string. The next one is going to be favorite food, and that's going to be a string. And then the other one's going to be favorite color, and that one's going to be a string. Now in the body of this constructor, we're going to say full name. We'll say this dot full name equals full name. This dot favorite food equals favorite food. And then we're going to say this dot favorite color equals color. Okay, so what we've done here is we've said we're going to supply this constructor with a full name, favorite food, and favorite color. Once we have those values supplied, we're going to set the local variables that we created for this person object with the parameterized values. So when I pass in full name, I'm going to set the full name local variable. When I pass in favorite food, I'm going to set the local favorite food variable. When I pass in favorite color, I'm going to set the favorite color local variable. I'm also going to create a toString method, and I'm just using this to test the class to make sure that the class actually binds the data correctly. So when I pass in the values and I instantiate a new person object, those values actually get added to that class. So I'm going to just say console.log. I'm going to use back quotes so that I can have multiple values. I'll add a new line with 2 spaces from the left, and I'm going to say full name. And then for this one, I'm just going to say this dot full name. I'm going to add a new line with 2 spaces. Then I'll say favorite food. This dot favorite food. a new line with 2 spaces, and then I'm going to say favorite color. This dot favorite color. Okay, so we've created a person class with local variables. We've added those to the constructor so that anyone that instantiates our class, they need to supply these default values. And we added a toString method that's going to output the contents of our class, specifically the full name, favorite food, and then the favorite color. Inside our component, we actually want to create a new variable called myProfile, and we're going to assign it this person data type. So I'm going to say myProfile, and then I'm going to give it a data type of person. Now, if you remember from the previous exercises, when we did something like my name and we said string, we are basically saying the variable my name is going to be a string value. So the same kind of rule applies to this. We're saying the variable my profile is going to be a person data type. Inside the constructor, what we want to do is we want to go ahead and instantiate a new person object. So we're going to say this.myProfile equals new person. So again, I'm creating a new person object. And if you remember from the constructor, we have to supply some default values. So as IntelliSense comes up, you can see that it says full name, favorite food, favorite color. So for this, I'm going to say full name is going to be Professor Richard Crasso. Favorite food, I'm going to say oysters. And then for favorite color, I'm going to say red. Now I'm also going to call the toString method just to make sure that in the browser window, the data has actually been bound to the class. So I'm going to say this.myProfile.toString. Okay, I'll go ahead and save that. Once that code has been saved, we actually want to implement this class that we created inside the HTML code. So we'll go ahead and open up mydetails.component.html file. If you remember correctly, we had that unordered list with 3 list items. So we can go ahead and replace the Professor Richard Crasso with the actual values from that class. So we need 2 opening and 2 closing curly braces. We're going to say myProfile.fullName. Now to be clear, myProfile.fullName is going to be that variable we just created inside the component.ts file. So I'll open that back up and I'll show you that we created this new person object. We named it myProfile. And one of the properties is full name. So that's what we're trying to access here. We're saying myProfile.fullName. The next one is going to be for oysters, so we can go ahead and clear that out. And we'll call the value we created inside of our component. So we'll say myProfile.favoriteFood. We also want to change the hard-coded red value to what the class value has. So we'll say myProfile.favoriteColor. Now we're going to create one more list item, and this list item is going to be for the keywords that we created inside of our class. So I'm going to say group item. I'm going to give it a span tag, and that's going to be what I'm going to use to iterate over that array of data. So we're just going to say keywords. And inside the span tag, I'm going to use an ng4. So I'm going to say ng4. And then I'm going to say let word of myProfile.keywords. And then inside the span tag, I'm just going to use the open and closing curly braces. And I'm going to print out the value word. So if you remember correctly, we created that keywords array on our person object, which you can see here. So what we want to do is we want to iterate over that. And to iterate over arrays, as we learned in previous courses, we use a for loop. So we're going to for loop over this array of data, and then we're just going to output each element in the array. So in this case, the value word represents the current position in the array. So as we loop over it, we're going to be outputting that value. So TypeScript 2020, coding with Angular, and then ng Omaha. So let's go ahead and save this, and we'll go ahead and start our server again and see the results of what we've done. So I'm going to say ng serve. All right, now that it's finished, we'll go ahead and open up a browser window. Let's go ahead and refresh the page. And we see our updated content. So we have Professor Richard Crasso, favorite food, favorite color, And then as you see in the keywords, we have this list of items. So we say TypeScript 2020, coding with Angular, and NG Omaha. So just to recap, we added a person object inside the mydetails.component.ts file. This class was exported, and the reason why we exported is because we wanted to access it from the component, which was the code from line 22 down to line 39. We instantiated a new person object, supplied it with default values. The default values I used was Professor Richard Crasso. You would want to use your own first name. You would want to use your favorite food and then your favorite color. And then I just did this myprofile.toString to see the results and make sure everything was bound correctly. So let's go back to the browser and just make sure that that console.log is actually being outputted. So we can go to our developer tools. I'm using Firefox, but F12 works on any browser that you'd be working with, and you just want to find the console. And this is what we're looking for here. So in Firefox, you go Web Developer, and then you're looking for Toggle Tools, and then you're looking for the console. In Chrome or Internet Explorer, same kind of process, F12, and then you're looking for the value that says console. And as you can see, the data that we outputted in the component is truly there. So the full name, Professor Crasso, favorite food, and then the color red. And that is coming from this.myprofile.toString inside the mydetails.component.ts file. As you can see from this, the data has been bound using the double curly braces, and we've also demonstrated how to use the ngIf and the ngFor loop. To recap, in this lesson you learned the ngIf directive, the ngFor directive, how to bind data in an Angular project. In our next lesson you'll be learning about route guards and passing data to routes. Thank you for watching.